moving on, Surpass community webinar, pre-release 12/16, and we've got some absolute corkers in this today, haven't we, Georgie? Do you want to give us a quick run through the content?
I'll give you a quick overview of the highlights. So we're going to start off with looking at survey questions. So I'll give you a brief overview of what they are and how they can be used, and then we'll look at the specific features that have gone into 12/16. So we've got a new survey question type, the Likert scale question type, and then we've also got an enhancement to the current multiple choice survey question where you can add an answer box. Then we'll look at item authoring in general. So we've got a few features there. So moving items between subjects, enhancements to item sets, so we've got a couple of features in there, and then also the advanced mode to the short answer question. And then also some media enhancements, so the ability to duplicate files in the media library. And then we've got a nice indication for open source material in delivery. And then finally looking at some scheduling enhancements, so the ability to bulk schedule via CSV, which includes scheduling more candidates and also extracting key codes using a spreadsheet.
That's great. So there's a lot of stuff coming out from the usability team, their little enhancements here and there, and certainly benefiting administrators, test administrators, some great stuff in there for them. So without further ado, let's move on and start with survey questions. So Likert items, not Likert scale, as I've been saying it wrong for the past 30 odd years. Let's move straight into that one then. And you're going to start with why we use survey questions.
Yeah, so why do we even use them? What's the point in them? Generally, it's to get information from the candidate. So you may already use them already, you may know your own use cases, but just to kind of discuss more around them and why they're used in general. So you might use them to get feedback on the testing experience in particular. So, for example, if you've got a centre, you might want to know how that centre's performing and compare between the centres to see how they're all doing and if anything can be improved on that end. Or you might also want to get personal information from the candidate, for example, about their academic background or additional languages to help kind of feed into how you look at the results as well, potentially.
Okay, very good.
Yep, so you can see at the bottom there the current types of survey questions that we support. We've got multiple choice, multiple response, essay, and now a new Likert survey question type. So all of those question types are non-scored, so in delivery, when candidates answer those things, it won't affect their marks.
Great, so we're going to look at this Likert item in a bit more detail here, aren't we?
Yeah, so a Likert item is essentially where the candidate can provide an answer on a scale. So as you can see there, it might be from very likely to very unlikely. It can be anything you want on that scale.
So a tenuous link back to Surpass conference, people fill in feedback forms at the end. And if you haven't already filled in your feedback form, the thank you email did contain a link to SurveyMonkey, so you can let us know what you thought there and see another example of a Likert scale.
Yeah, nice link, Ben. So Likert items have two modes. You've got a single mode, which allows you to give them one statement to provide an answer to, and the matrix mode provides you with multiple statements that are presented in a grid format. Okay. So I'm going to show you in item authoring now how you'd go about creating a Likert item. So here you've got the template for the Likert item. You've got a question stem at the top. And then below you can choose your mode. So in single mode, you've just got these points that you can define on the scale. So we've got very poor to very good in this case. So these are all of the labels that will be displayed on each of the points on the scale. So you can edit these and you can add up to a maximum of 10 points on this scale. So that's the single mode. You've got one statement and one scale that the candidates answer. However, in the matrix mode, you've still got the question stem, but then you've got the option to add multiple statements. So in this case, how would you rate your experience of Surpass? You might then break that down into the different areas of Surpass. So for example, item authoring, test creation, so all of the different screens. And then they'd rate their experience of each of those screens according to that same scale. So it's presented in a grid format to the candidate. I'll show you how that looks in delivery. So here we've got an example of a single mode Likert item. So you've got one scale, one question, and you can provide an answer on that scale. And then this is an example of the matrix mode. So we've got a grid displaying all of the statements down the left, and then the scale here where they can select an answer according to each of the statements.
Fantastic stuff. So this could be used for a number of things, like, for example, excuse me, things like, how far did you travel to get to your test centre, for example, if you're in a remote area? Was it convenient for you? Did you find the staff friendly? If you want to do internal audits, that kind of thing, or just about the exam in itself. How did you find section 1? How did you find section 2? Did you feel they were on par? Just to get the students' view while they're in that, candidates' view while they're in that test-taking state.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good. Okay. Anything else on Likert scale, or shall we move on to multiple choice surveys with
let's move on.
Very good.
Okay, so the multiple choice survey has been enhanced in 1216, so now you can enable an answer box to be applied to one of the answer options. So if we go into a multiple choice survey question, you've got the additional options hidden behind this cog icon. So here you can now tick enable answer box. And then I'll come back to the label in a second and explain. But once you've enabled the answer box, you can choose a particular answer option that you want to enable it for. So for example here, I've got what's your favourite screen of Surpass? I've got a couple of options, but then I've got other. So I might want them to elaborate on it, or I might want them to give a different answer that I've not kind of thought of before. Okay. So if I enable the answer box here, then when they select the other answer option, they'll be able to type in the answer box and provide a bit more information. Just going back to that label as well, so this is designed for accessibility purposes to be used by a screen reader. So we've got this generic please explain in the box below, which is the default label, but you can customise this to whatever you want. So it could suit your particular question. You can specify what information you want people to write in the box.
Very good. And
then just to show you how it looks in delivery as well. So here, what's your favourite screen? Surpass. Until I select the relevant answer option, this is greyed out, so you can't have the candidate accidentally putting anything in there.
Okay.
But as soon as they select the relevant one, they can explain in the box below. So we can add in a different answer. Yeah.
Very good. Okay. So that's pretty self-explanatory. You might have several options, other want more details. Let's move on from that then onto our next section, which is item authoring. So we're looking at moving items between subjects, enhancements to item sets, and advanced short answers. So starting with moving items between subjects, this is different to the kind of the copying items that we've had previously, isn't it? And is designed for a number of reasons, which we might come on to a little bit later, but I'll let you crack on with explaining why, how this is done, and then why people might want to use it.
Yeah. So as Ben just said, you can duplicate items within a subject. You can import items from one subject to another. Both of those things are sort of kind of a copy and paste kind of functionality. The item still exists in its previous location, and a copy is sent to the new location. However, when you move items between subjects, it's a cut and paste kind of functionality. So that exact item is moved from one subject to another, which is why it's slightly different.
Okay.
So in Surpass itself, just to show you how it's done, you can select multiple items in your subject, so one or multiple, and then there's this Move Items button at the top. So this was introduced in the last release of Surpass, and at that point you could move items to a different folder. So this has been enhanced now, so at this point you select whether you want to move to either a folder or a subject. So for this purpose I'm going to select subjects, and if I have the permissions to edit items in other subjects, then I can proceed. This is also controlled by a permission as well, so if you don't have the permission to move items, then you won't have access to this as well.
Okay.
So just to give some context to that, we've made it quite secure because moving items from one subject to another could be potentially kind of fatal for a particular exam. So if an exam has items that are in it that are set to live and those items are in there, if you move the items from the subject, then the test won't be able to be valid because the items won't be there to be found.
Of course, yeah.
So we've controlled this by a permission, and there's also lots of validation that takes place actually through the move, which I'll show you. So if I continue now, the first step is to select a subject. So if I select a subject from the list of those I have access to, I must then provide a comment. So you have to give a reason why you're moving it. As I said, it is quite a big thing to move an item. So I'm just going to put in one use case, which is more appropriate in geography. So it might be that the question has evolved over time while it's been authored, and now it suits a different topic or different area.
Okay, so I think we'll explain a little more later. This all shows up in the version history as well, doesn't it? So you've got a full audit trail of why this has happened. But I mean, some really good examples of this might be, if you wanted to move a summative item that's kind of lived out its shelf life, it's been used too often, but you still want to keep it in there for formative tests, just as practice papers. It's a nice, easy way of moving it, making sure there's nothing left behind that might accidentally get into any of your summative test forms.
Exactly, so it tidies up the subject. So the validation's taken place when I've added my comment and proceeded to the next step. So those 3 items that I selected are all available. So at that point, it kind of runs that background check for you. If any of the items have been deleted in the process of you selecting them for moving, then that would come up as unavailable because they can't find them. If they've already been moved by somebody else during that short kind of window of time when you were starting to move them, again, they'll be unavailable. Also, if any of the settings or the content isn't compatible with the subject type that you're moving to, again, it would tell you that it was unavailable and it would tell you the reason why. So it doesn't just kind of leave you in the dark, it will tell you.
Everything's covered.
Yeah. And the next stage is deciding whether you want to move tags over as well. So if your items have tags on them, those tags might not necessarily exist in the subject you're moving them to. And so that would be a manual process of going into setting up those tag groups and tag values in the subject, and then manually applying them to the items once you've moved them. However, this can auto-create them for you in the background, so that will be a real time saver in terms of the manual steps that you'd have to go through.
Yeah.
So this tick box at the top, create them if they don't exist in a new subject, you can tick. And then beneath that, you can select the relevant tag categories and tag groups that you want to transfer across.
Very good. So, excellent example there of just, the thought that goes into these new features and enhancements from our usability team and, working together with the product owners to make this as easy as possible, as intuitive as possible, but then also covering those bases for, saving time.
Yeah.
You don't have to go and find it again, change everything over. It's just all there as much as you want it to be. You can leave them out when you're transferring them if you want. So, great.
Yeah, exactly. And then the final step of the wizard is, again, that summary, because, as I said, it is an important thing that you're doing. So you need to know that it will affect any tests that these items are used in. So you've got a summary there of what exactly is going to happen. You have to tick that you understand the consequences before you then proceed to move.
Yeah, so again, no chance of doing it accidentally. You have to check that big fat tick button and say, I want to do this.
Exactly.
Great.
So I'm just going to show you an example of some items that have been moved to this subject, just to show you what Ben was talking about the item history and how it's tracked. So these items were moved to this subject. So you can see in the item history, item moved subject, and so it tells you where it's come from, where it's gone to, and you've got the full audit history from when it was initially created. So you don't lose anything, all of the history is there.
No, that's great. So you can see who created the original, who's moved it, everything is just all there for review.
It's all there.
Great stuff. Okay, so moving on, we have next enhancements to item sets. So item sets are, we used to call them friend items, just in case you are still using that kind of terminology, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
But we've made some enhancements to how this works now in the next release, so take it away, Georgie.
Yeah, so just to give you a bit of clarification on what item sets are. Item sets, as Ben said, are kind of friend items. So they're items that are related by a particular topic, or it could be that they're all used in the same case study. They're all related in some way. And so we've made a few changes to item sets over the past few releases. But the main thing is that the order that the items appear in item authoring is the same order that the items will appear to the candidate in delivery. And so that's now really crucial, that the order that the items are in item authoring doesn't get changed. Even if it's accidentally by an item author, you don't want any changes to happen because that could have an impact on how the candidate performs in delivery.
Okay.
So we've introduced a new setting which allows you to fix the order of the item sets. So this means that item authors can't make any mistakes when they're moving around in item authoring. They're not going to move things by accident or add or remove any of the items in the set. So when we go into the item set to edit it, there's a new fix the order of the items setting at the bottom. So if I apply this and save, you can see that a small symbol has been added here. So that's a visual indication this item set is fixed.
Yeah.
So what that means is I can't move these items in or out. I can't change the order. It won't let me. I physically can't do it. So Although I can't change the order of the items, add or remove items, what I can do is I can go into each item individually and edit that item. So it's not stopping me from editing the content of the item itself. I can still do that. It's just the order of the items in the item set.
Okay. Yeah, so no nasty surprises when someone sets up an item set, comes to use it later, and someone else has removed something. It's all being looked after.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay.
And then the other change in terms of item sets is in HTML delivery. So there's a new setting in test profiles which allows you to enable item set numbering. So as I just said, item sets are groups of items that are related in some way. And so it would make sense for the candidate to have a visual indication of that because at the moment, or as before 12.16, each item was its own breadcrumb. They all looked the same. They all looked of an equal status. There was no indication that any of them were sort of linked together. However, now if you turn on item set numbering in the delivery presentation tab of test profiles, then that will enable this new look of the item sets in delivery. So if I just show you how that looks. So here on the left, we've got an item set. So by default, it is like that, so you can see all of the items in that drop-down menu. Expanded is the word, thank you, Ben. So all of those breadcrumbs are indented and the numbers are decimal. So you've got that indication that they're all part of one thing. They're not separate, complete entities. They're all in one topic, in one group.
Great. So that's really good for candidates, isn't it? When they're trying to set their timings, they can immediately see that actually number 5 is a set. It's got more than just, it's not just 6 questions, there's 10. Yeah,
and it's very clear to the candidate, so because it's expanded, they're not going to be disillusioned that everything's just, there's 6 questions, they'll see how many questions there are as well.
Yeah, and depending how it's written and how you prepare your candidates for their tests, they should be aware then that those items are linked, so if they're trying to, gauge the time, they might struggle with the first one, go, okay, I'll come back to that set, rather than, attempt them all and kind of, I'll just move on to the next one. Yeah. And then come back to the set later on when I'm a bit more in the zone, so to speak. Okay.
Yeah.
And then next we have the advanced short answer question type, which is a new one. And now we're not going to talk too much about it today, but we are going to expand on this in the future, aren't we? So what we're going over today is the kind of first stage of this one. Again, another example of how our usability team are kind of getting things in there, and the agile process allows us to put this in there. You can start using it straight away, and then we'll build on it in the future. But this is really intuitive. I'm really impressed when I saw Georgia working in the back end, kind of creating this example. I'm not going to steal your thunder there, so please move on to your demonstration.
Yeah, so at the moment, short answer is, just to give a bit of background, is where the candidate responds to a question with a short text response. So they have one big box that they have to put a short text response in. This is sort of a similar premise, so the candidate provides a short text response, but in this case they've got multiple answer boxes that they can put their response in. So this might be if they need to give multiple answers to one question, or if it's kind of a fill-in-the-blank scenario. So this does provide the same sort of functionality as a fill-in-the-blank question, but as Ben said, it is going to be developed in the future to sort of diverge from that functionality as well, to give you those options.
Okay.
So if I just show you how you create that in item authoring. So you've got this toggle, so this advanced toggle is available in HTML subjects. And you've got this half-finished question that I've started writing. And at this point you can add in text and also answer boxes into your box. So if I add another number 3 here, so you can schedule tests in, and then if I add an answer box, I can then type in the correct answer.
Okay.
The other way of doing this is to type my text and then highlight the correct answer and then press add answer, and it will automatically add that as the correct answer in the answer box. So that's kind of, depending on your preferred way of doing it, they're the 2 different ways that you can author this question type.
Yeah, so this is designed, you've got everything automatically added to the bottom there as well. So however you prefer to do your item stem and then answer options, there's something for you to make it as intuitive as possible with that. The other thing I've noticed, so you've got the capitalisation, for example, on test administration, but not on schedule. So is there a way to make sure that answers have to be capitalised, or what other options do we have?
Yeah, so there's this additional options menu at the top, as there is in quite a few different question types now. And we've got this requires answer to be case sensitive tick box. So at the moment, it's not requiring them to put the capital letters on the T and the A of test administration.
Okay.
But if I were to tick that, then that would require the candidate to get that right, else they wouldn't get the marks. So that's one way that you can do that. There are a couple of other options as well. So you can also choose to limit the candidate response. So what that does, it allows you to specify the number of characters that you want to restrict the candidate to inputting. So that defaults to the number of characters that are in the correct answer, but you can alter that as you wish. And this also dynamically changes the size of the answer box in delivery, so it might make it a nicer experience for the candidate if they've got the right amount of space there for the word they're putting, or equally you might not want to give them any clues, so you might want to increase it a bit. It's up to you how big that box is.
Okay, so for example, if you're testing younger children, maybe doing formative testing, that kind of thing, you might want to just give them a nudge that it's got 5 characters in that answer or something.
Yeah.
So that's a nice way to be able to do that for them.
Yeah.
Excellent.
And you can also choose to only award the mark if the candidate selects all of the correct answers. So this is kind of absolute marking. The candidate must get everything right in order to get the mark.
Yeah. Okay.
However, if you don't select this, then that's kind of cumulative marking. So for each correct answer they get right, they get a proportion of the marks.
Okay.
So you can choose which way you want to do it.
Very good. Okay. So we're now going to move on to media enhancements. Is that right?
Yep.
Okay. So a new section for media. Oh, sorry. This section is about new additions to media enhancements. We've got duplicate files, and we've got the indicator for open source material. Duplicate files is something that I've been after for a while, because when I'm putting together little tests to show people examples when we go to exhibitions and things, you'll put an item set together for the high fidelity image viewer, for example, and then you'll need the same media again. You're like, right, I'll have to go and upload it again, and it's a little thing, but you've got some really good examples of where this is even more beneficial to people, haven't you, Georgie?
Yeah.
So let's move straight on to duplicating files.
Yeah, so as Ben said, it might look like quite a small enhancement, but I think it will be quite good for usability of media in the media library. So you can now duplicate any kind of file and any image group in the media library. So what this means, it creates an exact copy of that media to allow you to edit it.
Okay.
So in the case of images, what that might mean is that you might want to duplicate it and edit the text alternative. So for example, you've got one test that's in English and one that's in Spanish, so you want to have different text alternatives in different languages.
Okay.
So you could do that. And the reason you might not be able to do that initially is because that piece of media, as Ben said earlier, is attached to a live item. So you can't edit media that's attached to a live item. You'd need to create another one. So that's also in the case of HTML source material. So you can't edit HTML source material that's attached to a live item. So I can duplicate this. And then once I've duplicated it, I can edit the duplicate. So you might have that piece of source material, it's very near what you want for another item. You might just want to tweak it slightly or use it as a template, but at the moment you couldn't do that if it was attached to a live item. But in this case, that original one stays intact, but you can edit a duplicate of it.
So I suppose an example of that might be, in a language test, you might want to change out just odd words here and there, so you're giving different questions to different people, on the exact content. Okay, so moving on now to the indicator for open source material. So this is building on the enhancements we made to, in last webinar we spoke about the PDF viewer. You can now have 60 files, is that right? And it's about tidying up this candidate experience, isn't it? And just making it a lot easier for them to navigate when they're in the middle of a high pressure test. So let's have a look at this. Yeah,
exactly. So this is enhancing usability for the candidate, as Ben said. So if you've got a lot of media attached to your items, which I feel like more and more people are trying to do because it makes them more interactive and easier for the candidate, it might be quite difficult for them to keep track of which ones they've got open, which ones they're looking at just from looking at the screen. However, we've now introduced this new kind of user interface for the candidate. So you've now got a change of colour and a change of icon depending on which piece of source material you've got open. So if we open the calculator, you can see here the colour of this icon has changed, and you've also got this open folder icon, which indicates that this calculator is now open.
Okay.
If I then open another piece of source material, again you can see which ones I've got open. It's very clear to the candidate what they've opened and what they haven't, so they can see that straight off without really having to dig.
Yeah, it looks real nice. It's just docked automatically to the screen. Everything's there. You can see very clearly what is open, what relates to that question.
Yeah.
So, very good.
Yeah, it's quite a small one, but
yeah, it's
improves the
not a
candidate
lot more to
experience.
talk about, is it? It's just
Yeah.
a visual explanation, I think, but very important nonetheless. Okay, so this, I believe, is our last section for today.
Yep.
We're going to look at scheduling enhancements, bulk scheduling via CSV. So there's quite a few enhancements in this kind of one all wrapped up, isn't
Yes.
there? If you're used to using APIs for scheduling tests, that kind of thing, or if you're used to handling a lot of candidates against different test centres or candidates who are taking multiple tests, it can be quite laborious, should we say.
Yep.
But talk us through the new bulk scheduling, Georgie.
Yeah, so bulk scheduling already existed. You could already schedule up to 1,000 candidates for one test at one centre. So that was already there. And that was using a nice wizard-based process. So you'd select your centre, your test, and it would take you through it, and then you'd upload the candidates. However, there's now a new multiple centres option. So you can schedule up to 3,000 candidates for tests at multiple centres.
Big increase, isn't it?
Yeah.
3,000.
Yeah, exactly. So it's to cater for the high volumes, and also because you're scheduling multiple candidates at multiple centres and for multiple tests potentially, that kind of accounts for the upgrade in the number of candidates that you can schedule for tests. And it's all done in one CSV file, so you don't have to work with multiple files, it's just one.
Very good. So you've got an example of this to show us?
Yes,
This one I made earlier?
I do. So I'll show you how you can actually do that in the schedule screen of Surpass.
Okay.
So if I select the bulk schedule button here, we now have two tabs. So the single centre tab is the existing bulk schedule functionality, and we've now got this multiple centres tab that's been created. So what happens is you create a CSV file outside of Surpass, and then you upload it, and you can have that sent back to your email address and also a secondary email address with the key codes attached, so that you can then distribute those key codes. Okay. So the primary email address field is always populated with the email address of the user that's logged in. So in this case, it's my email address. But you can provide a secondary email address. So this could be your own backup email address, or it could be the email address of a colleague or somebody else you want to receive those key codes.
That makes sense, yeah.
So once you've added the relevant email addresses, you can download a sample CSV file. So this is going to help you to know what information you need to put into that CSV file to schedule the candidates.
Okay.
So this downloads as an XLS file, so when you save it, you need to remember to save it as a CSV file. And it does have two sheets at this point. So there's a help and guidelines sheet here, which we created in the documentation and training team. So this is meant to help you know exactly what you need to put into this spreadsheet to give you some guidance on that. But you can populate the item list sheet with all of the relevant details that you want to schedule. And so when you've done this and you've saved it as a CSV, you can upload it to Surpass.
Okay.
So I have one that I created earlier. So here we've got a list of all the candidate reference numbers, the centre reference, the subject reference and the test reference. You can put in a test form reference if you want, but you don't have to. And you can also define a PIN. And then the other thing that's mandatory is a start date.
Right. Okay.
But all the other things are populated according to the defaults in Surpass.
Yeah, so start time, end time is just midnight of the start and end dates.
Exactly, yeah. So that's the CSV file. So what you do, once you've saved that as a CSV, you can browse for that on your device. And then you simply schedule the test. So this may take a while depending on how many candidates you're scheduling, how many tests you're scheduling. But once it's completed, you'll be able to view a report. So you'll either be able to view this in the UI, it's come up here, or if you've closed that, it will already be emailed to your email address that you've put in and the secondary one as well. So it's not like you'll lose it if you navigate away.
Oh, fantastic.
So this is essentially the same CSV that you put in, you'll now get out with all of the key codes put in here.
Brilliant. So that can easily be mail merged into, you know, a candidate list or whatever to give them their personalised details for logging on, that kind of thing.
Yep, exactly. So you've got a list of all the key codes, and all of these have scheduled successfully. If they hadn't for any particular reason, it would tell you why. And so that would allow you to go back, make any edits that you need to according to the error. And then you can just re-upload this same report. So the ones that have scheduled successfully with the key codes, you don't need to worry about. Just re-upload it. It will ignore those.
Right, okay.
And it will reschedule the ones that had the error.
So again, intuitive, easy to use, and helping you out, save time by just ignoring the stuff that's already done.
Yeah, exactly.
Just skipping over it.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, I believe that brings us to the end.
It does.
So again, apologies that we haven't been able to take questions live in the webinar today, but if you do have any, send them through to marketing@btl.com. By all means, you know, let us know if you've been watching on there as well, what you thought of today's webinar. We'd love to hear your feedback. Before we go, big question on everyone's minds, I'm sure, is when can I start using these great new features? Georgie, when can people have access to these features?
So by the end of the month. However, if you want a kind of further sneak preview, we've published our preview release notes and release video, so you can watch that on the learning portal, so learn.surpass.com, or you can see the release notes on the knowledge base.
That's great. So as you can see there, more information is available on learn.surpass.com. Cheeky mention for the certification test on there maybe as well.
Yes,
if you haven't done the certification test yet, then I forgot to bring one of the little flags down. you could be an official Surpass expert. So thank you again for watching and listening today. If you want to watch this through again or share it with your colleagues, just go to btl.com/surpass/past webinars. This one should be available to watch at some point tomorrow and onwards. If you want to see highlights from the Surpass conference, that's conference.surpass.com. Highlight videos from the conference will be going out periodically over the next month or so. If there's anything you urgently want to see again or share with your colleagues that you didn't have a chance to while you were there, do let us know and we will attempt to make that a priority for you. And then finally, just a reminder, if you are in the US, you are more than welcome to join us on the 29th of November in Washington, DC for some breakfast and chatter and excellent presenters. So